Well guys, I've been bad again. Another interesting project to take a look at. Let's see if we can get this thing to fire up and run. What we have here is a early 1970s Cushman Trackster. It's kind of a hybrid, Argo meets snowmobile, bulldozer kind of thing. I've wanted one of these for years. At this vintage, Cushman was owned by OMC Corporation, and the engine that's in this is actually very similar to the engine that's in my 1971 Snow Cruiser. It currently doesn't run. It's a two-stroke, horizontally opposed. Either they're a 25 or a 29 horsepower, depending on the vintage. And if I can't get this engine up and running, or even if I can, I may end up converting this over to like a Predator 670 V-twin from Harbor Freight. It's a fairly common conversion to switch them over to a four-stroke. They're generally quieter, much cleaner burning, and produce almost as much power. I brought this home last night, purchased it locally, and about the extent of my playing with it is, I know the engine isn't seized. You can grab on the pull cord and give it a little tug, and it does pull over. I pulled the spark plugs, squirted a little bit of lube down into the cylinders just to help things over, and hooked the jump pack up to it and got the starter solenoid to at least engage. However, the battery terminals are a little on the green side, so it didn't have enough juice to turn over. But I think we could probably get it to turn over. The fuel system is currently not hooked up. The tank is just sitting here. No idea what kind of shape it is in on the inside. However, common modification guys do. They replace these tanks with an outboard fuel cell of some sort. And I think we need to make a few little checks before we get too carried away trying to fire it up. Namely, we've got the air filter housing here. We should probably take the nut off of that and make sure there's not a big mouse nest or something living in there. Let me put you guys on a stand, we'll grab a few tools, and we'll start taking a little bit of a look at this thing. I've pulled the spark plugs again. We'll take a wire brush and clean up the ground on the positive. That gives us a reasonably decent connection to both those. I'll give it a first try with a trusty old jump pack, but before I do that, I want to pull that air filter off and make sure that we're not going to suck a bunch of nastiness into the engine. This is the airbox. This cable here appears to be the throttle cable, or it goes to the governor. It's not hooked up to the throttle assembly right now. Buzz this off of here. Make sure we don't have to serve any evictions. Well, obviously something's been hanging out in there, but it doesn't appear that there's anything too terrible. The air filter will come out of here. It's just, yeah, there we are. And it looks reasonably clean. So we'll leave it alone. And I'm just going to screw this nut back on. This is the wiring that comes from the starter solenoid that is under there. And we've got two wires that would carry power to the coils, etc. We won't worry about those, but for now, and one of these is the power coming from the solenoid. Should be 12 volts hot on there, and the other one, it will close the coil on the start solenoid. Obviously, nothing to do with the key switch here because the wires aren't hooked up in behind. So we're not getting anything. Double check the battery connections and everything seems good. Well, we got a momentary well, that certainly sucked the battery dry. Let me go get a better battery. I got a couple of hot, brand new deep cycle batteries that I was going to use on my camper sitting in the back porch. So they would work quite well to fire this thing up, I think. Nice big heavy duty battery. That should certainly help out with the start capability of this thing. We'll try this again, see if it's going to turn over. Well, that certainly sounded better. I'm kind of in a dead spot on the starter right now, I think. Interestingly, we've got what looks like a ballast resistor here. And the way these things came from the factory, as I understand it, is they had some kind of ignition amplifier system. So I think the ignition system has been modified on this machine a little bit. Hopefully that'll work. So our white comes out of the positive input, goes through the firewall. The purple comes from our ignition switch, and that's supposed to be our power to the ignition amplifier. The green goes to the coil, which it does on this side. I haven't looked at the other side yet. So we've got our purple comes in here, comes into this. That goes to the coil, and then from the coil it goes to ground. I got to be completely honest, the wiring system doesn't make 100% sense to me, but I think we can get this to work. I'm going to try and pull this ignition switch out. For some reason, the key doesn't want to come out. Start, on, off. Ah, there we are. Okay. We drop our key switch out. Battery goes to this. That's our red. Start goes to the main terminal here on the end. Now we should be able to stick the key in. That would be run. There we go. Our purple line is going to go to the ignition. That will bring power to the ignition system. And the orange is the accessories. We're not worried about accessories right now. Let me go grab an ignition tester and we'll see if we can convince this thing to give us some spark. So there's our spark tester, and nothing. So I'm going to take a wild guess that the points are not opening and closing on this very well. We got a couple of wires that are coming up out of the block here. One single, I believe. Ooh, that is pretty rotten. It's probably our points, and this will be our ignition coil here that goes into the rectifier. There's a ground lead on the top for the engine. I'm not seeing anything off of the points. So I've got ground connected, or well, the red is connected to a ground. The blue is connected to the red lead. And I don't know whether you guys are hearing that, but I'm getting 0 ohms when I short from the ground point I'm using here down to the top of the block. So we'll clip on to our points lead, such as it is. And we're showing 4 ohms right now. As soon as I take the power off, showing 4 ohms resistance. And as I turn the engine over off of the crankshaft, I'm not seeing any difference. So that tells me that we're probably shorted out somewhere along that wire, given that the insulation is all peeling off. That's not good. What we can do to test this is over on this side. This is where the points attach to this coil. They run across this wire over to the other coil and they get it to fire. Now, if I disconnect this wire and put a spark plug tester on the system and tap that wire back on that post, if the coils are good, that should simulate points opening and closing, and it should give us a little spark. Ooh, that's warm. Well, that was certainly interesting. I was just looking at the coil on the other side, and somebody hooked it up so that the positive lead coming out of the ballast resistor was connected directly to ground. Who knows when that was done. Anyways, now we should have 12 volts coming into the coil, and this should be providing a ground. If I tap on that, we are getting spark. That tells me what we need to do is pull apart the flywheel off of this machine and clean up the points as best we can and replace the wire that comes up out of the points and goes to the coils. To get at the points, we've got to take the recoil off, the airbox, this ducting, we got to do something. This is the governor over here. We got to do something with it, and then pull the flywheel itself off. And I've had some experience with these OMC flywheels. There's a sintered metal of some sort cam that's underneath there, and it's very easy to screw those up. So we got to be careful that we don't do that, because they're damn near unobtainable. I've also closed the choke just to be on the safe side, so that nothing goes tumbling down the throat of the carburetor. I'm thinking it's a good thing that we pulled this out. Definitely some critters have been living in there. In the back of the governor here, there is a bolt that helps set the belt tension on the governor. And I'm hoping if I can get it backed off just a little bit more, I can swing this whole assembly back out of the way. I got the governor loose enough to flip back, and I got the air duct cover off there. I think it's safe to say that that is likely a good chunk of the cushion that came out of the rotted seats. The next item on the list is going to be the starter. Just got to back that off. Now we need to convince the starter to move down so that we can get a little bit of slack in the belt. I'm going to get a great big nut, or a great big socket to go on that nut. And I don't know how we're going to get it out of there. I haven't figured that one out yet. There is a hole here in the edge of the flywheel. I don't know if you guys can see that or not. And that hole is about the right size to take a 3/8 drive ratchet, and we can kind of spin it around so that it jams against the case. And that will hopefully get us where we want to be. We've got the that 3/8 extension jammed in behind there. And we'll see if we can convince this that it wants to spin off of there. Well, that came not too bad. Unfortunately, I don't have a 1/2-inch drive impact. I'll have to pick one up. But a ratchet will do for now. Let me grab a pair of gloves, a vacuum cleaner, and a bag, and we'll finish doing the eviction that we need to do on that mouse condo. Rapidly starting to run out of daylight here, but hopefully we can get this flywheel off before I have to call it a night. I've got a harmonic balancer puller put on here, and you got to try and be careful to pull this off evenly. There's that cam in behind that we don't want to break. I'll give that a little whump with a hammer. So the phone rang just as the balancer popped. It would be a good idea to find a new belt for that. Okay, this is the critical piece. These cams are very easy to break, and they govern your spark advance. The engine will run without it, but it won't run very well. And you can see that there's a mechanism here. The tricky part is when you go to reassemble these, you have to engage it in the and you have to have it underneath this little clip. This little clip will break that ear off very easily if you aren't careful when you're putting this all back together. And not on this one, but I've learned that from experience. Now the points don't look bad. I'll give them a clean up in the morning with a little bit of emery or file or something. But the problem that we're having is this wire here, this black wire that runs up to across in front of the firewall, kind of across in here. The insulation is just falling off of it, and it is shorting out against the engine. So once we get that wire replaced, I think we'll be in good shape for getting this thing to fire up. Would be nice to get it making some noise. Obviously got a little bit more cleaning up to do with the mouse house that was in here, and the carburetor, I'll get the number off of it and see if I can find a overhaul kit for it. Hopefully it'll do well enough to at least make this thing bark off and make some noise. I think we're going to end this one here. Basically I got this apart. In the next video we'll continue reassembling the points, and we'll see if we can get this thing to run. Thanks a lot for stopping by. If you got this far in the video, can you throw me one of them thumbs up things? If you haven't done so already, maybe subscribe, all that wonderful stuff, ring the bell icon, and we'll catch you guys in the next mess. Thanks a lot. Bye.